Welcome in Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, StreamYard. We are reading tonight. The study is coming from Job chapters 29 through 31. Invite somebody and let's walk through. Let's break down the word together and work the text. Miss Lisa is back on you.
Amen. Good evening. I am reading from the Amplified Bible from the book of Job, chapters 29 through 31. And it reads, And Job again took up his discussion and said, Oh, that I were as in the months of old, as in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone upon my head, and by his light I walked through darkness, as I was in the prime of my days, when the friendship and counsel of God were over my tent, when the Almighty was still with me, and my boys were around me, when my steps, although rich pastures, were washed with butter and cream from my livestock, and the rock poured out for me streams of oil from my olive groves. When I went out to the gate of the city, when I took my seat as a city father in the square, the young men saw me and hid themselves. The aged arose and stood respectfully. Princes stopped talking and put their hands on their mouth. The voices of the nobles were hushed, and their tongues stuck to the roof of their mouths. For when an ear heard my name mentioned, it called me happy and fortunate. And when an eye saw me, it testified for me approvingly, because I rescued the poor who cried for help, and the orphan who had no helper. The blessing of him who was about to perish came upon me, and I made the widow's heart sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My justice was like a robe and a turban. I was eyes to the blind, and I was a feet to the lame. I was a father to the needy. I investigated the cause I did not know and assured justice. I smashed the jaws of the wicked and snatched the prey from his teeth. Then I said, I shall unalive in my nest, and I shall multiply my days as the sand. My root is spread out and open to the waters, and the dew lies all night upon my branch. My glory and honor are fresh in me, being consistently renewed, and my bow gains ever new strength in my hand. They listened to me and waited and kept silent for my counsel. After I spoke, they did not speak again, and my speech dropped upon them like a refreshing shower. They waited for me and for my words, as for the rain. And they opened their mouths as for the spring rain. I smiled for them when they did not believe, and they did not diminish the light of my face. I chose a way for them, and sat as chief, and dwelt as a king among his soldiers, as one who comforts mourners. Chapter 30. But now those younger than I mock and laugh at me, whose fathers I refuse to put with the sheepdogs of my flock. Indeed, how could the strength of their hands profit me? Vigor had perished from them. They are gaunt with want and famine. They gnaw and dry and barren ground. By night in the gloom of waste and desolation. They pluck and eat saltwood mallows among the bushes. and their food is the root of the broom shrub. They are driven from every community. They shout after them as they after a thief. They must dwell on the slopes of waters and in holes in the ground and in rocks. Among the bushes they cry out like wild animals. Beneath the prickly scrub they gather and they huddle together. They are the sons of worthless and nameless fools. They have been driven out of the land. And now I have become the subject of their taunting. Yes, I am a byword and a laughing stock to them. They hate me. They stand aloft from me and do not refrain from spitting in my face. For God has loosed his bowstring, attacking me, and he has afflicted and humbled me. They have cast off the bridle of restraint before me. All my right and my rabble browed rises. They push my feet away and they build up their ways of destruction against me like an advancing army. They break up and clatter my path, upsetting my plans. They profit from my destruction. No one restrains them. As through a wide breach, they come. Amid the crash of falling walls, they roll on all over me. Terrors are turned upon me. They chased away my honor and my reputation like the wind, and my prosperity has passed away like a cloud. And now my soul is poured out within me. The days of affliction have seized me. My bones are pierced with aching in the night season, and the pains that gnaw me take no rest. By the great force of my disease, my garment skin is disfigured and blemished. It binds about me, choking me like the collar of my coat. God has cast me into the mire, a swampland of crisis, and I have become worthless like dust and ashes. I cry to you for help, Lord, but you do not answer me. I stand up, but you only gaze indifferently at me. You have become harsh and cruel to me. With the might of your hand, you keep me alive, only to persecute me. You lift me up on the wind and cause me to ride upon it. And you toss me about in the tempest and dissolve me in the storm. For I know that you will bring me to unalivement and to the house of meeting appointed for all the living. However, does one falling in a heap of ruins stretch out his hand? Or in his disaster, will he not therefore cry out for help? Did I not weep for one whose life was hard and filled with trouble? Was not my heart grieved for the needy when I expected good and then came evil to me? And when I waited for light, then came darkness. I am saying within my heart is troubled and cannot rest. Days of affliction come to meet me. I go about mourning without comfort, my skin blackened by disease, not by the heat of the sun. I stand up in the assembly and cry out for help. I am a brother to holy jackals and a companion to ostriches which scream dismally. My skin falls from me in blackened flakes, and my bones are burned with fever. Therefore, my lowry, my harp is used for the sound of mourning, and my flute for the sound of the voices of those who weep. Chapter 31. I have made a covenant agreement with my eyes. How could I gaze lustfully at a virgin? For what is the portion I would have from God above? And what heritage from the Almighty on high? Does not tragedy fall justly on the unjust, and disaster to those who work wickedness? Does not God see my ways and count all my steps? If I have walked with falsehood, or if my foot has chased after deceit, oh, let him weigh me with accurate scales, and let God know my integrity. If my step has turned away from the way of God, or if my heart has covetously followed my eyes, or if any spot of guilt has stained my hands, then let me plant and let another eat from the results of my labor, and let my crops be uprooted and ruined. If my heart has been enticed and I was made fool by a woman, or if I have covetously lurked at my neighbor's door until his departure, let my wife grind meal like a bond slave for another man, and let others kneel down over her.
Mm.
For adultery is a hideous and lustful crime. Moreover, it would be a sin punishable by the judges. For if it is a fire which consumes to abate it, destruction, ruin, and final torment, an illicit passion would burn and rage and uproot all my life's increase, destroying everything. If I have despised and rejected the claim of my male or female servants, when they filed a complaint against me, what then could I do when God arises to judge me? When he calls me to account, what will I answer him?
Mm.
Did not he who made me in the womb make my servant? And did not the same one fashion us between in both in the womb? If I have withheld from the poor what they desire, or have caused the eyes of the widow to look in vain for relief, or have eaten my morsel of food alone, and did not share it with the orphan. But from my youth, the orphan grew up with me as with a father. And from my mother's womb, I have been the widow's God. If I have seen anyone perish for lack of clothing, or any poor person without covering, if his loins have not thanked and blessed me for clothing them, and if he was not warmed with the fleece of my sheep, if I have lifted my hand against the orphan, because I saw that the judges would be my help for the council gate, then then let my shoulder fall away from its socket, and my arm be broken off at the elbow. For tragedy from God is a terror to me, and because of his majesty and exaltation, I can do nothing nor endure facing him. If I have put my trust and confidence in gold, or have declared fine gold my hope and assurance, if I gloated and rejoiced because my wealth was great, and because my powerful hands alone had obtained so much, if I beheld the sun as an object of worship when it shone, or the moon going into its splendor, And my heart became secretly enticed by them, and my hand threw a kiss from my mouth in respect to them. This also would have been a heinous sin, calling for judgment. For I would have denied God above. Have I rejoiced at the destruction of the enemy who hated me, or exulted in malicious triumph when evil overtook me? No, I have not allowed my mouth to sin by cursing my enemy and asking for his life. I assure you, the men of my tent have said, who can find one in need who has not been satisfied with his own meat? The stranger has not lodged in the street, because I have opened my door to the traveler. Have I concealed my transgressions like Adam or like other men by hiding my wickedness in my bosom? Because I feared the great multitude and the contempt of families terrified me, so that I kept silence and did not acknowledge my sin and did not go out of the door. Oh, that I had one to listen to me. Look here to my signature, my mark. Let the Almighty answer me. Let my adversary write out his indictment and put his vague accusations in tangible form. Surely I would proudly bear it on my own shoulder and bind the scroll around my head like a crown. I would count out to him the number of my steps with every detail of my life, approaching his presence as if I were a prince. For if my land has cried out against me, and its furrows weep together, if I have eaten its fruits without paying for them, or have caused its rightful owners to lose their lives, let thorns grow instead of wheat, and stinkweed and cockleburrs instead of barley. So the words of Job with his friends are finished. I have just read the book of Job, chapters 29 through 31.
Thank you. Do we have any questions before we go first? Go forth and do our breakdown. Um, or if you want to say what was read so far, if you have a thought, or did you get some enlightenment? Those of you who have went through this book before. We're gonna get ready for our breakdown. Y'all, we getting towards that end, Miss Patty.
Yes, ma'am. I look forward to it.
So, Job, chapters 29 through 31. The book of Job is an awesome movie to watch. Oh, why are you saying it's a movie to watch? Because there's a lot of twists and turns to it. It starts off with things happening, and it seems to be like it's just life isn't fair, but in the end. So in Job 29 through 31, Job delivers his final concluding defense before God. He reminisces about his past glory and prosperity. His past glory and prosperity. Remember, he was a wealthy man and righteous man from the east. So contrast is bitterly with his current degeneration. So in his current status, things are gone. Things have left. Things were fading. One instance after the next, after the next, after the next. Life happened. And issues an oath of innocence to demand an explanation from the Almighty. So, the summary of 29 through 31. Today, as Job continues the speech he began yesterday, he shows us how much he longs for the past. What did his past look like? Plentiful. Wealthy. So, specifically in the area of his relationship with God, he reflects on a time when he felt the nearness of God in a way he describes as friendship. He says, the friendship of God was upon my tent. Knowing about someone and even knowing someone is different from having a friendship with them. And it's certainly different from saying you feel like their friendship dwells in your home with you. God calls us friend, but some of us have made God an associate. Just a little nugget. So Job also laments the loss of his reputation. People used to listen when he spoke and be in awe in his wisdom. Now they won't stop advising him and they think he's a fool. All because of the outward appearance of him and the things that has happened to him. But his wisdom isn't vanished. The only things that have changed is his circumstances. You mean the one who lost everything, who's no longer wealthy, where his house fell apart, his wife cursed God, all of his children transitioned, and his body was even afflicted? He still has wisdom? Yes. The only thing that changed was his circumstances. He went from being wealthy to having nothing. He went to having a whole family to having nothing. So the people around him are assessing his wisdom and righteousness based on his life circumstances. We do it here. If you don't look the part, if you aren't articulate, if you don't have this, if you don't have that, you can't hear from God. Mm. Oh, she's nothing but a woman. She don't know that much. I need to guide her. I need to cuff her in, or I need her close to me because she ain't been saved that long. We got a lot of saved old fools. Been saved 30 years and still don't know nothing. Been saved 30 years and still doing what they're doing, have not applied principle. Yes, they saved them, but they just have not grown. So previously, Job's friends accused him of mistreating the poor. But here, Job tells us about all the ways he extended his hand to the needy and fought for justice. He's an upright, righteous man. Now, not only are his friends not fighting for him, but they are fighting against him because they're looking at his circumstances. And because God revealed his vantage point to us in the first chapter of this book, the book of Job, we know which scenario is true. We know his friends are wrong. His friends were dead wrong and they stamped God's name on it. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Sapphira had a lot to say, and they said, "Thus says the Lord." They were far from the truth. His friends are wrong. So, this is the lowest point of Job's despair. All along, he has been acknowledging that God is responsible for his circumstances, even though God isn't the active agent. But let's be clear, God knew about it. Remember, Satan and God had two conversations. God knew. He's not caught by surprise. Even when it comes to us, he knows. So he's still sovereign over it and has allowed it. I'm talking about God. God is still sovereign over it and God has allowed it. So there's some truth to that. How do we know that? Because of the two conversations that God and Satan had concerning Job. But Job didn't have all the information we have. God's motives are largely unknown to him. In chapter 30, Job seems to begin drawing his own conclusion about what his trials say about God's motives and character. He says, "You have turned cruel to me. With the might of your hand, you prosecute me." After all this, Job troubles make him question the character of God. Even though Job is righteous indeed, he has pride and entitlement in his heart. Can it happen to a righteous one? Yes, it can. But it won't happen to me. The Bible just gave us an example. And those of you who are like, it ain't happened to me, it won't happen to me, there's pride. Be careful. So Job is innocent of the things his friends accused him of, but God uses this trial, trial, to reveal those other things in his heart, things that couldn't have been revealed in any other way but through this trial. So now that these thoughts of Job's heart have surfaced, we are reaching this turning point of the story. God loves Job and doesn't want Job to think things about him that aren't true. Just like Job didn't want his friends to think things about him that weren't true. Has anyone ever misunderstood you? That's a question for us to think about. Did you want to help them to see the truth, especially if it is someone that you love? God wants to help Job see the truth so that Job won't believe lies about him anymore. God is always in the process of revealing himself to his children. So let me say this, those of us, certain things is going on because God wants us to see the truth. He wants you to know that you are an overcomer. So certain things have to happen so you can prove, so you can know you're an overcomer. You have to overcome something. So looking at today's God shot, Job considers God his friend, even though he doesn't feel God's nearness at the time. It's encouraging to know that it's even possible to have that level of intimacy with God. That time alone with God is important. Time alone with God is so important because it gets you to know the identity that God has for you, who God has called you to be. So let me say, all this is mine. Yeah, this is my hair, but I am not my hair. I'm not this. This right here one day will go away. So who am I? If I want to know who I really am, and I'm going to say this continuously, then I must sit with the manufacturer of the product, the creator of the product. And sometimes products goes wrong. Sometimes products get old. So the creator, God himself, is the manufacturer of Queen, the product. And in order for me to know how Queen must properly work in this world, according to how the manufacturer wants me to work, what my purpose is, what my will is, I must go to the manual that the manufacturer wrote out for me with my instructions, with my guide. So friendship implies not just knowledge of a person, but trust of the person. You want to become the Lord's friend? Trust him enough to guide you. Trust him enough to love you. Trust him enough to hear his voice over mine. You can only trust someone you know, and you can only know someone you spend time with. So I would love to ask you this. Why do we know each other more than we know God? Because we choose to spend time with each other more so than God. Why? Because we have not made the invisible God visible to us. God ain't tangible. Yes, he is, and he can be, and will be, and shall be. But you got to spend time with him. The invisible God can be and will be very visible to, in you, and with you, but you got to let him in. May your knowledge of God and your trust of God always be increasing so that your friendship with God grows richer and richer all the time. God is where the joy is. Why some of us so upset and we so unstable and we are so depressed, we have all this anxiety. We're not where the joy is. So Job 29, the good old days, Job longs for the former blessings and prosperity that he once enjoyed. He looks back on the time when. So when what? God's friendship was intimately with him. Have you ever had a time with your relationship with God and you be like, why can't I hear God today? What is going on? Why is God quiet in some of our lives? Job was highly respected by his community and lived a life like a king. Job actively protected the vulnerable, the poor, acting as eyes of the blind and the father of the poor. Yes, Vicky.
Was that something that you asked us why sometimes God is quiet with us?
It's something for it's something for you to think about. When we do the open discussion, we'll talk about that if you want to um, give your answer then.
Okay.
So Job 29, the present is fading. Job bitterly laments his tragic shift in circumstances. It was a tragic shift. And one day, all was gone. And now my body is afflicted. So his social honor was completely vanished. Even social outcasts and young men mocked, spit on, and scorned him because they looked at what? The circumstances. He feels betrayed, believing God has aligned with terror and abandoned him to physical agony and emotional distress. One small little thing happened to us, and we act like we don't have it together. But look at Job. In 31, the oath of innocence. Job closes with a rigorous formal oath of innocence, challenging God to answer him. He went before the Lord boldly. Boldly. And he wanted an answer. He talked about ethical commitments that he kept, such as never practicing deceit, never practicing adultery, and never practicing greed. He emphasized the generosity to widows, orphans, and travelers that he had. He had a heart for people. He formally pronounces curses upon his own life if he has actually committed these things. Okay. And he's demanding that God hear his case and provide an explanation. Job just wants to know why. Job just wants to know why. Okay, must have put that somewhere else. It's in the car. So, 29 through 31. So Job now gives a master account of good old days, of his prosperity, honor, and yearns for their return. He enjoys God's favor. He enjoys God's guidance that was of the past. His children were with him. He lived in a luxury and was respected in the city by young and old. Everybody respected them. This is the past, y'all. By princes and nobles, because his deeds of character, his righteousness and justice. So Job anticipated long life and a peaceful death in his nest as he enjoyed prosperity, vigor, strength, and he pictured the dew all night on his bench, his glory, fresh within him and his renewed bow. Others welcome his advice as a farmer welcomes the spring rain. He was honored. His smiling countenance renewed the confidence. His leadership made him like a chief or as a king in an army and one who confronts mourners. So it is hard to understand why God would punish such a man as this. So now, because of what was allowed, it's sad to say that Job is scorned by younger men whose fathers were outcasts of society, unfitted even to help Job. Dogs watch the sheep, worn out, weak, and poor, and hunger they feed on the desert scrubs, driving out from among men, homeless nomads, driven from the land. Once he was honored, now it's like, yeah, you just like them. So it is these things that happen dealing with humanity who now treat Job with utter contempt. Remember, all because of the circumstances, not paying attention to the heart. They totally forgot everything that he did. Wow. So notice the phrase is descriptive of they scorn, meaning taunting song. I am their byword. They upbraid me. They spit in my face. They push away my feet, meaning they trip him. They break up, meaning they block the path. Job's honor and prosperity have totally vanished. One day. One day is gone. He was wrecked with pain, disfigured with agony, reduced to dust and ashes, and ready to die. And his man, he was like, my grave is awaiting. It awaits me. God won't answer his prayers, cruelly oppresses him, tosses him around, and is about to unalive him. Job thoughts is all over the place. So surely he will not afflict in the grave one who has prayed to him when dying. Job had shown mercy to others, but to he himself was shown no mercy. His intense suffering is compounded by loneliness and rejection. His physical and emotional condition is appalling. Appalling. Why would a righteous man like Job have to become a brother of jackals and um and a champion of all these obstacles? Why is it that this man who was so honored is now ripped to nothing? Job insists that he has not been guilty of lustful looks at a young woman. He knows that God sees and punishes such sin. He has not acted deceitfully. An honest examination would conceive God of this. He has not strayed from the way of the righteous. Otherwise, he would deserve to lose his harvest. So, God, why is all this happening? And I've been upright. He has not coveted his neighbor's wife. Otherwise, his own wife should have become another's man, and his possessions and life be destroyed. Job had been merciful to his servants, charitable to the poor, to the widow, and to the fatherless. He had been free from greed for gold. He had not been secretly enticed by idolatry, kissing his hand toward the sun and moon. He was without malice towards his enemies, hospitable to all, free from secret sin, and honest to his real estate dwellings. If any changes against him were written in a book, he would be proud to carry out around and wear it like a crown. At the end of chapter 31, the words of Job are ended. Job's words will be rightly ended when he is ready to give praise to the one who alone is worthy of it. Chapters 29 through 31 are very much clear on what's going on here. And as we have to slow walk through this, we really see that, wow, are we serious? And some of us think that we've been through so much, but going through these chapters, going through these verses, can we really compare ourselves to Job? Can we really compare ourselves to Job? Vicky, what was the question that I said? Because I believe you wanted to answer it.
You said, why can't we hear from God?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we can be in a season of a wilderness.
Oh, but let's do this. Make it personal for yourself.
So for myself, there's times that I cannot hear from God. And I'm like, hey, like, what is this? And I'm like, And I believe it's because I'm in a season, or I'm in a season of a time of being in a wilderness. And, I'm like, hey, God, where are you? Like, I can't hear from you. Like, where are you at? Even though I know he's there, but I'm in a season of being in a wilderness that I can't hear from him. But the only thing I can do is put my hope, my trust, and my faith in him that it's going to be okay. Like, for instance, with my mom back in April, it's like, I know he was there, but I'm crying out to him and I'm crying to him and I'm, talking to him and I'm being still and I'm trying to listen to him. I'm like, hey, where are you? So it's like I'm in that season of a wilderness that I can't hear from him, but only to trust him. Like the Israelites. Moses didn't hear from God for 40 years.
Nope, I want you to keep it personal. So listen. And the reason why I'm telling you to keep it personal, because every last one of us should be able to hear the Lord. Because we have direct access. So you said in your time of wilderness, did you ask God why you were put there?
He hasn't gave me that answer yet.
I stopped the video.